Hey everyone, it's story time with Amanda Jean. I'm going to tell you about my daughter's birth. Um, this one, I. Okay, so this is my second time attempting to do this video. Um, I have a hard time with this one because it's kind of a downer. I feel like it's important to share birth stories, bad stories, um, because I don't know, when I was first pregnant, when I was pregnant the first time, I don't know, um, I like I consumed everything about pregnancy that I could on YouTube, right? Like any YouTuber that I respected, I was like, tell me your birth story. And even the bad ones, like you want to know because you want to know what could go wrong with yours, right? Um, and the thing is that my story's not that bad. Let's stop right here and take a second. It's not traumatic, and it's not that bad, but it's not a happy story either. Like I was not happy at the end of my labor and delivery. So let's get into it. You'll see what I'm talking about. And then hopefully maybe I can like insert cute pictures of the baby at the end or something to help it be happier. I don't know. Let's just see. So, my baby girl was born early. She was 3.5 or 4.5 weeks early. She was barely not a preemie. And I remember going to the doctor for the regular once a week checkup that you do at the end of your pregnancy. And she checked me to see how dilated I was. And I remember I was pretty dilated. I remember my husband and I both being like, whoa. And she said, you're not going to make it to your due date. And I was like, okay. Um, and we had some events that happened. We had my brother-in-law's wedding, and we had a baby shower, and the day after the baby shower, I went into labor. And we had put all of the gifts in the crib. The next day, I was in labor. Uh, so things did not go as planned, and that's okay. So we went to church that Sunday, uh, and we didn't go to church for very long. And we went home and we took a nap. And I woke up and I it seemed as though my water had broken. I realize now, um, because they broke my water later, that's not what it feels like when your water's broken. And I've heard stories and stuff like that of people who have woken up from naps to their water being broken, and it's like the whole bed is wet. And that was not the situation, but we thought that my water had broken. So we contacted my doula, and she was like, okay, well, here's things that you can do to make sure that you're in labor or not, or to like keep labor going and stuff. So we went for a walk, and we started doing the exercises. I was doing the last bit of exercises, and I had like two or more of these like crouch things or whatever they were, I don't remember, to do. And I like fell to the floor because I had a huge contraction, and I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I think I'm in labor. We don't need to do this anymore. Um, and so labor commenced. And at about 6 o'clock, I think, my doula came over and she came to help us through everything. I was in a lot of pain. I had decided early on in my pregnancy that I wanted to try doing natural labor. That was really important to me. At first, it was important to me because I The whole reason I went into my foray of natural labor is because I'm terrified of needles. And I got a glimpse of what happens because my husband was taking a an early childhood development class or something like that. And so he took the class, and part of that, they showed an epidural. They don't show like an actual epidural on an actual person, but they show like a couple of drawings or a cartoon or something of like this is what happens when it happens. And I realized that an epidural needle must be massive, and I was like, not happening. Because I have a big fear of needles, and I was like, this is not going to happen. Let's see what other options we have here. Um, so I started looking into natural labor. Anyway, so my doula came over. Um, she helped us through. Something that I really, really recommend, or one of the reasons that I recommend a doula, is because they know how to make things less painful. They know how to help you through a labor. And the thing is I wanted a doula because I knew that my husband wasn't going to be able to hold it together during labor, but I was going to be in labor. I I highly I was pretty sure that I wasn't going to be able to be calm, cool, and collected because I was going to be in labor. And so knowing that, I was like, we need another person. It can't be just me and Ben. It has to be, we need somebody else. So we hired a doula, and I'm glad we did. She was definitely a good level head at a time when neither of us had it. But the other thing, the big thing that I'm like, get a doula, is the way that they know how to help you through pain. What ended up working for me the best was I was kind of laid back in the bed, and my doula would take one knee and my husband would take the other, and then they would take the corresponding hip and they would squeeze my leg and my hip together kind of during a contraction, and it made it hurt so much less. I think they said it was about 9 o'clock. We went to the hospital, and we get into the hospital, and it's not my doctor who's on call because the way this hospital works, on the weekends it's the doctor on call. Um, During the week, if you go into labor, your doctor will be there. But on Saturdays and Sundays, it's whoever's on call. And I went into labor on Sundays, so even though it was so late Sunday night into Monday morning, I had the doctor on call. And not a good doctor. Not a good doctor. She talked down to me, and she only came to talk to me during contractions, which is like the stupidest thing ever. Because when you're in the middle of a contraction, like, you're not thinking clearly, you're not listening to anybody, you're getting through a contraction. And I was in, like, my contractions were not easy. Like, well, whose contractions are? Like, it's a contraction. It's, your body is getting ready to push a baby out. It hurts. It hurts. And then, because I have a fear of needles and I was already going through a lot at the time, they were like, okay, we're going to put in an IV. And I was like, I don't want an IV. I don't want an IV. And my doula told me, you don't have to have an IV. So, but they made a big deal out of it and made me sign papers, or they tried to get me to sign papers. That it didn't work out because I was always in the middle of a contraction. When they, when they came to do important things, I was always in the middle of a contraction, and they didn't wait until I was done with the contraction. They were like, you have to deal with this now. And I was like, too bad. I got to a point where I couldn't take the pain anymore. I had been laboring naturally, but we had a code word for when I wasn't sure. I wanted to make it through all the way without being on anything, but I just wanted to have an out just in case I needed it. And I'm glad that I did. We had a code word. I used the code word. We got an epidural. So I ended up getting an IV because they flood you with drugs before you get the epidural, which I didn't know. Anyway, so I got the epidural, and then the epidural didn't work. I still felt everything. I still felt the contractions. My legs were kind of numb, so I knew that if I stood up, that would be bad, right? But I still felt enough that they had these bars at the end. They had like a big bar thing at the end of the bed, and I put my feet on each side of like each bar part, and tried pushing the baby out. And the baby wasn't coming out. And the doctor eventually came in and noticed that the baby was sunny side up, which means that their face is facing upward. And they tried to turn the baby around, and it wasn't happening. And they broke my water to get the baby to come out better. And eventually we just started trying to push her out. But the thing was, I hated this doctor so much, and she made me feel so yucky, that she was in the middle of doing a C-section, and the nurse was like, okay, it's about time to push, but you can wait for the doctor, or you can start pushing now. And I was like, I'm pushing now, screw that doctor. And anyway, so I tried pushing the baby out, and nothing was happening. And well, apparently what was happening, according to my husband who was watching, is whenever I would try to push the baby out, or whenever I would have a contraction, my heart rate would spike and the baby's heart rate would spike, which is apparently no good. And eventually the doctor came in and said, the baby's not coming out. You need to do a C-section. Except for she didn't word it quite that way, because they want you to make the choice to have a C-section. It's your choice, or you can try to keep pushing the baby out the other way. But she said that we had to make a choice soon, because every minute we're just going to listen to that heartbeat fade away. She says that as she's leaving the room. What a bitch. Like, I don't want to swear on my channel, but for real, like, this woman, I don't know how she's still in practice. Well, apparently she's not as much in practice, which is good, because she should not be. So yeah, we were left freaking out about our baby dying. Chose to do a C-section, and the anesthesiologist came in and flooded me with the C-section drugs, which are different than a regular epidural, which I did not know. Oh my gosh, the relief I felt after getting the C-section drugs was amazing. Best feeling I've ever had in my entire life. I went through being in a ton of pain to not feeling anything at all down there. It was amazing. I had been in so much pain for so long, right? So to finally have it all just go away, it felt amazing. It was like the most peaceful feeling I've ever felt. And I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but it was a hard and stressful night, you know? So then to have that taken away, I was just like, oh my gosh. It was amazing. So they wheel me into the C-section room, and or the C-section room, surgery. They wheel me into surgery, and put me on the surgery table. And then I've got the anesthesiologist on my right side. I've got my husband on the left side, and the doctor and her assistant or whatever are on the other side of a tarp. And they hit my belly with some surgical instruments to make sure that it's numb, that I can't feel anything, and I can't feel anything. And then they took the baby out, and like the first thing that I remember hearing is that she had grabbed onto one of the surgical tools. That's the first thing my daughter did upon her entrance into this world, is she grabbed onto one of the surgical tools. And I'm like, oh, at least hopefully it wasn't a sharp one, you know. But I remember calling out, I want to see my baby, I want to see my baby. And so they Lion King style held her above the tarp, and I saw her, and she was beautiful. And then they whisked her off into the NICU, and I was really sad because I wanted to hold her on my chest, but because we had problems and it was an emergency C-section, she had to be whisked off to the NICU. Thankfully, she was only in the NICU for half an hour. My daughter's first half hour of life was in the NICU, but no more than that. No more time having to be in intensive care. So we're really grateful. And the other thing is the NICU unit is usually like on site for a C-section. So usually, I'm pretty sure they're always on site. They have a unit on site for a C-section. It's just on the other side of a pane of glass. So my husband was actually able to grab his phone, take some pictures of her through the glass, and you can see she's got a cone head, and it's adorable, and she looks all swollen from trying to be pushed out, but she's beautiful. And then they took me off they sewed me up, took me off the surgery table, took me back into the labor and delivery room, and I was exhausted. And then, like I said, half an hour later, after she had been in the NICU and they made sure she was breathing and everything was okay, they had her wrapped up and everything, and I got to hold her, and it was her and me, and I felt really weird because I felt like I had been robbed of the opportunity to bond with my daughter. And so, and in these first moments that I had with my daughter, my doula was like, "Okay, we have to start trying to nurse right away. We have to start trying to get her to get stuff right away, or they're going to put her on formula." And at the time I had the, oh no, formula. Don't worry, we'll get there. So we tried, oh my gosh, I can't remember what the stuff is that comes out before breast milk, but it's really good for your baby. So we tried squeezing that out manually and putting it in a spoon, and then spoon feeding it into my daughter. And yeah. And then eventually we get taken up to the room we're going to be staying in. And I passed out. Like, I don't remember a lot from. Apparently no one does, so this makes me feel better because you're just sleep deprived the whole time. I was exhausted. And then when I would first try to go to sleep after the baby was born, I would have flashbacks, like PTSD flashbacks to trying to push the baby out. And that was really hard. And our first night, I had our baby spend in the nursery at the hospital so that I could get some sleep. and she was fed formula, and it's okay. We really struggled. My daughter and I struggled hardcore to breastfeed. It was hard. Breastfeeding is hard when you're learning how to do it the first time. Baby and mom, it's hard. Um, because you don't know what you're doing, and there are things that I look back at it now and I'm like, oh, well, if we had done this and I could have done this and whatever, like, I'm like, then that would have helped a lot. But I didn't know that at the time, and I had people who were trying to help me, but they didn't know, and um, we had some sweet moments in the hospital. Like, I got to take a picture of the first time my husband ever held her, and so I'm glad I got to do that. But because I was so exhausted, I slept through her first poop, which I know sounds like something really weird to be sad you missed out on, but that's a big deal for a baby, I wasn't there for when they tested her hearing. Anyway, so I was just having a really hard time feeling like I had bonded with my kid. And then we were struggling with breastfeeding, and that was really, really hard. And my milk wasn't coming in, and all of those good things. It was hard. It was hard. Um, and then, I felt like I had been robbed of an experience, and I blamed the doctor. I, The funny thing is actually, now that I'm telling it the second time, I can see a lot of the positive things, and I feel a lot better about it. So hopefully I'm able to talk about those things. But I felt like I had been robbed of an experience, and I blamed the doctor. And because I kind of had a 50-50 feeling, and I talked to my doula about it after the birth. I was like, do you think if I had a different doctor that maybe things would have ended differently? And she said, I don't know. Because the thing is that doctor stressed me out so badly that it felt like all of the progress that we had made to that point with labor and delivery, it felt like everything just went to crap because I just was so stressed out when we got to the hospital. And then my current doctor read through the notes of my labor and delivery, and she and I were talking because I wanted to talk about options for this baby. And she said that she doesn't want me to feel like a failure, and she says that I need to rewrite how I see this labor and delivery, because when you C-section moms, you'll know what I'm talking about, or when you have an emergency C-section, you feel like I failed at pushing the baby out the normal way, so they had to take the baby out of me. And that's a really hard feeling to deal with, especially when you're dealing with all of the other postpartum stuff that you're dealing with. So I struggled for some time with that. And my doctor was like, you need to see what I see, which is you made it to complete. You were trying to push the baby out. But you were trying to push the baby out sunny side up, which is the hardest way to get a baby out. And then you made the decision for you both to live by having a C-section. And I'm trying to see it that way. It's not super easy. Hearing her say I made it to complete made me feel a lot better, because it made me feel like I did it. Like I did it. But the thing is in the end I couldn't push her out. And my doctor and I have discussed reasons for that as well. And one of the things may be that I might just have a body that isn't made to push out babies. Like, my frame might be too small. I am a small person. And when you look at pictures of me in the last weeks of pregnancy, I am huge. My stomach is so big compared to the rest of me. So it kind of makes sense that even though my daughter was tiny, she was 6 pounds, 7 ounces. It was, I couldn't push her out, and that's okay because I have an aunt who is bigger than I am, but her hips and tailbone and everything are not made to push out a baby either. And they didn't know that kind of stuff back then when she was having babies, so she just broke her tailbone every time she had a baby. Um, so I'm learning. I'm trying to see the light of things, and the thing is that I actually see, and I'm looking so much forward to this baby being born, remembering bits from my first daughter, I'm having a son, from my first kid, from my daughter. Um, there is some magic in those first few days together. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I I loved watching my husband hold my daughter. I loved sharing my daughter with my family when they'd come to visit and being like, "Look what I made." Um she's beautiful. She's beautiful now. She was beautiful then, she's beautiful now. I'm I'm so glad that we have her in our life. And so yeah, it didn't go the way I wanted it to. It didn't go the way I planned, but I have a beautiful, beautiful 3.5-year-old daughter. It was, it was scary a little bit because C-section is a major life surgery, which I did not know. Um, but I realized it after I had it because I realized I was afraid to stand up because I was afraid that if I stood up, all of my organs were going to fall out of my body. Or that if I tore a stitch, that all of my organs were going to fall out of my body. I was terrified. I was terrified for those first for that first week after the surgery. I really was worried that if I did something wrong, I was going to lose a kidney or something. And now I know that that's not how it happens. Anyway, this has gone long enough, but oh yeah, that's my birth story. Thanks for listening and making it this far into the story. It's been a long, long video. Um, we'll see you next time. Bye.